Evening. Why don't you come on up here? But before we do, one of the speakers we got to give some slack to this evening. No tough questions, please, because the parents of one of the speakers is here this evening. Could Pete's parents please stand up? Okay. So please, how long did you live in Sherman Oaks?
1966 to 2001.
1966 to 2001. He knows what's happening. So, with that, a lot of people criticize local news. A lot of local news don't really understand how local news is made. What decides what leads? What decides, or who decides, what gets investigated, who gets investigated? Because without the, as you probably know, without the press pressing on issues, a lot of things never get discovered, and it's the press that is really the focus of getting a lot done in this city. So we have two major news people here this evening. First, I'm going to introduce Jill Stewart, who originally was from the Los Angeles Times and is now the executive manager of the LA Weekly and writes a number of the stories in LA Weekly. So I'd first like her to give her perspective on what she does and how she decides how stories are covered and what stories are covered. Jill?
Thank you. When 10 minutes are up, would somebody just throw something at me and I'll stop talking. So I've been in journalism since 1980 in the Los Angeles area. I'm in my mid-50s. The exact number will not be said. So I know a lot about the city. One of the ways that we pick stories in journalism, and especially at the Los Angeles Weekly, which is all media, it comes out on Thursdays. It's not traditional straight journalism. Some people call it point of view journalism. We decide what we think, we get a lot of data and facts, and then we publish what we think instead of pretending that we're non-biased. So we write a lot of very, very hard-hitting stories and interesting entertainment pieces, and we're kind of edgy. And one of the ways we decide what we're going to cover is, a young writer came into me about 5 years ago and said, I don't understand how we pick the stories here. They seem to be all over the place. One day it's about something going wrong in City Hall. Another day it's about the Los Angeles Unified School Board. Something went bad there. Another day it's about the environment. It's up, down, it's all over the place. And I said, well, we decide based on what we're really, really pissed off about. That's how we decide. We don't have any particular agenda except what really burns me up right now, and then we try to get to the bottom of it, which is hard to do. I'll give you an example of something on the inside. I was asked tonight by Richard to talk about the inside of journalism. Right now, you all remember when Beth Barrett, or a lot of you do, when Beth Barrett of the Daily News wrote the story about the mayor having an affair. It was on the front page of the Daily News. Well, right now, a lot of people in journalism are working on a story that kind of came along in the same way with a lot of tips and things. When Beth Barrett wrote that story, probably you don't know, that every single major newspaper and every radio station had a pre-written story about the mayor's affair ready to publish, and they were sitting there for weeks and months and months, and why weren't they published? Because they couldn't prove it. They were still trying to get one person on the inside of Villaraigosa's camp to say, yes, he's having this terrible affair. And no one would talk. So we all had, the Weekly had a pre-written story, Beth Barrett had her story ready to go. That's how it really works sometimes. It was very exciting because we were all secretly trying to beat the other papers, but the public did not know what was going on. So I'm sitting having coffee that morning, and I pick up the Daily News, I read it every morning. And there, I think the headline was 2 inches high or 3 inches high. It was like war had broken out. And it said, it said the mayor's having an affair by Beth Barrett. And I get 7 in the morning. I get a phone call from my reporter, David Zahnizer, who now works for the LA Times. And he said, oh my God, I'm so depressed. Because he had a story written about it. He was trying and trying. He was very close to confirming it. And he said, I'm so depressed. I said, look, She's the one who got it. Somebody had to get it. A lot of other people also did not get this story. Don't worry about it. He said, yeah, I know, but I should have thought of calling the mother-in-law like Beth did. I should have thought of that. Why didn't I call the mother-in-law? And I said, well, why would you in particular think of calling the mother-in-law? He goes, I failed as a gay man. A gay man would have thought of calling the mother-in-law. And I laughed so hard. But that's how it really is in journalism. And right now, where a lot of us, not everybody in town, but a lot of us are working on a story about allegations that may or may not be true, about a city councilman who will not be named, who the allegations are is corrupt. Now, this could turn out to be a totally untrue story, very specific allegations about corruption, or it might be true. It might be people blowing off steam and making up a story, which is very, very common and we have to watch out for, or this guy could be dirty. Several media are working on it. We've done a lot of interviews, and it's one of those things that may not ever be published because you can't just publish stuff like that. You have to be able to prove it. So that's one little piece of inside journalism. Now, back to how we pick stories. So I'm driving home last night, and I had a very late night at work, and I'm thinking about the story we're working on about corrupt Mr. and wondering if it's true and how can we get to it. And all of a sudden, I started hearing something on the radio. It's a totally different subject. And I'm thinking that I'm going to spend the evening thinking about this council member. Instead, the radio is all about how the fire chief of Los Angeles has put a news blackout on all rescues, rescue times, and the names of victims, and all other information about the LAPD's everyday work in going to fires and rescues that they feel the public should not have. I was so angry by the time I got home that I fired off, and here's where we assigned the story. I fired off memos to all of my two news bloggers who do nothing all day but write short news blogs, Simone and Dennis, and one of my good, really great investigative reporters, Patrick Range McDonald. And I said, here's what I want to have happen. By 10 a.m. tomorrow, I want 2 stories online in the blog. Is this legal? I want you to get to the following legal experts. Here's a bunch of names. Try like hell. Email them now. It's 11:30 at night. Some of them are still awake. I want another story about why on earth would the fire chief do that? Is he trying to get bad press? Is he trying to get the media to hate his guts, which is a really bad idea? Is he trying to get people who are in the know, like groups like this, who don't believe in secrecy, upset? Which is also a terrible idea. What is Fire Chief Cummings thinking, or is he not thinking at all? So those are the stories that I assigned. I totally forgot, and we're not even going to think about the potentially corrupt council member for probably weeks now, because now we've got Chief Cummings doing all this crazy stuff. So by the time noon rolled around today, we did have a wonderful story where we interviewed the top First Amendment attorney in Los Angeles, Kelly Sager, who represents, I believe, NBC and the LA Times, and she wins the cases all the time against government secrecy. She's brilliant. And her quote was, "This is completely illegal. This guy is totally making no sense. This guy is doing an illegal act. I can't imagine what this chief is thinking. I'd be amazed if Carmen Trutanich told him this was okay." So now we're on to the next story. And the truth is, nobody knows what on earth Cummings was thinking when he did this, how he imagined this would fly, how he imagined it would keep anybody in the media. Some in the media will be on his side, but now we're going to question him more, look much more carefully at him, ask much harder questions, and he could have really just had a normal fire chiefship, and now he's going to have a very, very tough time. So that's how we think. A lot of us in journalism, not Pete maybe, but in alt media, that's how we think, that's how we go after the news, and that's how we end up getting stories. I literally heard this last night on, I think first on KFI on a talk show, then immediately switched to KNX where they were reporting the same thing, and then by the time I got home I knew it was correct and we got to go for it. Now, of course, this is a really fun job. It's a lot of fun, but we're a very, very cynical bunch of people because when we talk to politicians, we assume a lot of them are lying to us. And I get a lot of politicians asking why I won't friend them on Facebook. And they are always asking. Bill Rosendahl, always trying to be a friend of mine on Facebook, and all these other guys. And the main reason is, sometimes I tell them this and sometimes I just don't answer, but the main reason is because once somebody runs for office, no matter how great they are, and no matter how decent they are in office, I never am sure if they're lying to me or not. I can't be sure because we've been buffaloed and screwed over so many times by people in office that we just have to be very, very, very careful, as if we're dealing with like ex-convicts or something. So, and some of them may be.
Future convicts.
What's that? I'm sorry. Pat says I'm dealing with future convicts. I'm sorry. Anyway, I think my 10 minutes are up. Pete's going to give you a different view from radio, and it's wonderful to see you all again. It's been a few years since I was here at this wonderful group. Thank you.
Okay, before Pete discusses it, you're known as an opinionated person, Jill.
No, that's not true.
Okay. What an opinion. How do you characterize the difference between LA Weekly and the LA Times? You work for both of them. What is the difference between LA Times and LA Weekly?
Well,
do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, oh yeah. God, don't, you know, this could go on forever, but the main things are that they're a paper of record, so they're trying to cover everything. And of course, we don't bother. We don't have time, staff, or the newsprint to do that. Another thing is attitude. The LA Times is very, very careful, not just to be sure they've got something right, but some of the writers and editors at the LA Times like getting phone calls in the morning from people who are all riled up, and some writers and editors at the LA Times do not want to hear riled up people. They don't want to write stuff that upsets people, and so they avoid it. They get more stuff leaked to them at the LA Times than probably the Department of Justice, a lot of which never gets even looked at. It's just piles. When I worked there for 7 years, I got piles and piles and piles of documents, whistleblowers, people willing to go on a limb, and you never knew, should I spend 4 months on this person, or is this just somebody blowing off steam and it's just going to be a huge waste of time? So you see a lot of that where they have to pick who they think they can trust, and a lot, I have to say, a certain amount of timidness. Now, they're not as timid as they were in the 80s and 90s when I was there. They have a lot more guts now. 10 years ago, they never would have published that wonderful series called Rating the Teachers, in which they published all the names of all the teachers, 6,000 teachers, and how they did when their kids made it to that classroom. And I thought that was a brilliant piece that should have won a Pulitzer Prize, because it's changing the argument in education in the country, that series. But they are hard-hitting compared to the 90s, but still, I know they're passing on stuff because we get their leftovers. When, you know, people call us when the LA Times won't listen. So they're almost like a bank. They have to be more respectable. All we have to do is be accurate.
Pete, your turn.